It's 6 a.m. and it's already looking bright. I am in Kolkata. I got in here late last night. I'm waiting for my pickup. I was all set up for my trip to the Sunderbans from Kolkata, and I met up with my friends who were to accompany me on the trip. And our first task was to find a tea shop where we could get a cup of tea. Almost every corner in Kolkata streets have a tea shop, and sampling the tea available here is one of the integral experiences when you visit Kolkata. So the plan today was to take a bus and head over to a place called Gadkali, from where we would then get a boat and head over to Balli Islands in Sundarbans, where we will be staying for the next few days. So after around 3.5 hours of travel, we reached this place called Gadkali, which is the entry point into the Sundarbans island. And from here, we are supposed to take a boat that will ferry us across to one of the islands of the Sundarbans called the Balli Island. I've always wanted to go to the Sundarbans, but it's never really happened. And finally, now here, I was getting my first glimpses of the Sundarban Islands. The boats that are taking us across, these are quite unique to the region. These are kind of oval-shaped hulls on which platforms have been built up. And on the lower platform is the engine bay, as well as some beds and luggage space and so on. While the top part is the seating area where generally people sit, and you get a good view of the waterways as you travel across.
So this is the entry point for STR, so the tiger reserve, the main area where the tigers are in good numbers. So most of the tourists who are coming to this site will be getting down here in Gadkali. This is Gadkali. And from here there are 2-3 islands where there are a place to stay. We are going to one of them called Balli Island. From here it will take an hour and 15 minutes depending on the wind and tidal condition to reach to that island. But in general the tourist has to go to the Sajnekhali first, take the permits, and then only they can venture into the forest.
Boat transportation across the waters is quite tricky here in the Sunderbans, and it is at the mercy of tides and currents and winds, and traveling against the currents and against the winds makes it quite a task to get to places, and some of these places are only accessible during high tide.
When the Britishers came, Hamilton actually settled in this island. Out of the 102 islands, there are like 48 islands. We have people in it. 4 islands are really in a submerged situation. Rest 50 is where the biodiversity is still existing. In the forest areas. And so in Sundarban, that's a very interesting thing. Like if you look at any other forest in India, the villages were intermingled. In Sundarban, villages were never really like inside the forest. It was always out of the forest.
As you pass through the waters, you can see that one side of the waterway is the national park, and mostly on the other side are islands which are inhabited by people. And the morphology of this place is very interesting because the tides are constantly coming in and out, and every time mud gets deposited, some of the mud is swept off, and there are new creeks and new islands being formed all the time. To be able to navigate these waters, the drivers really need to be on top of their topography and landscape knowledge, because it could get dangerous if you head into areas which are not navigable. The Sundarbans was also struck by cyclones periodically, primarily Cyclone Alia in 2009 and Cyclone Amphan in 2020, and it has suffered massive damage. After getting off the boat, we had to walk across to the resort, and we were walking along these dikes, which are kind of elevated walls built up from the ground to protect the island from the action of the sea and the waves. And this is essentially what prevents the salt water from coming inland and messing up all the agriculture inland. Now, this is a really important protection for the villages, and with the destruction of the mangrove forests with cyclones, these walls are prone to attack by the action of the waves and the tides. And you can see here that it's been continuously eroding, and parts of the wall have been breaking apart, and it has to be continuously repaired to keep the water out from the villages. And I've been told that now they're going to build a second wall beyond the first wall as an added protection for this island. The resort that we were staying in is called Sundarbans Jungle Camp, and we checked in here, had a welcome drink, and we were taken to and shown our rooms. And the rooms are really nice because the architecture is in the traditional style of the mud huts. But of course, these are pretty fancy rooms and very spacious with two queen size mattresses, a balcony, and a fancy toilet. Having settled into our rooms, we were now free to head out and explore the local biodiversity around us. And so we headed out into the adjoining village. One of our first sightings was this water monitor lizard that was trying to catch ducks in a pond nearby. These are quite common in the area, but difficult to get a sighting of. Interestingly, just next to where we were staying is a butterfly and dragonfly pond and garden that has been set up by Prosenjit Dawn. This consists of a series of freshwater ponds, each having its diverse substrates and vegetation, and each supporting different kinds of dragonflies and damselflies. And this is indeed worth a visit to anyone who is interested in biodiversity and odonates in general.
Spot on the wing, and behind the brown spot another white spot is there. But the damsel flies that can actually breed in that submerged vegetation we will see there. So which are the species?
Now, to talk a little bit about mangroves. So, mangroves are a set of about 100 or so plants and trees that grow in the region between the high tide and the low tide, called the intertidal region. And these plants and trees have roots which are either prop roots which grow out of the water, or pneumatophores or air roots which grow upward from the soil. And these are salt tolerant species, and they protect the shoreline from the action of the wave and the winds. They are also extremely important sites for breeding for fishes and other freshwater or marine arthropods. Now, this region where I am currently walking, the mangrove species of this region has been completely wiped out by the cyclone, and you can see there's not much growing here. And once these mangroves are lost, it's a difficult task getting them to come back and restoring them. And there is a lot of erosion of soil happening. And to prevent this, you can see there's a lot of bricks being laid down in this region to stop the soil from being washed away. So walking on this is quite tricky. It's quite slippery once you step into the mud. In this clip, you can see the water level at high tide. It's completely almost touching the dike. And here's the same place when it's low tide, and you can see how much of the land has been exposed in the intertidal region. And when the water rolls back, it exposes an amazing variety of life on the mud flats below. Predominantly these crabs, mostly comprised of red fiddler crabs that come out, and they're very vibrant against the muddish background. And you can see that they are digging holes, feeding on different life forms, fighting with each other, etc. And there are so many different types, different colors: orange, brown, some which are blue, some which are white, and this one which is kind of spotted with blue dots and so on. But the most amazing thing I've seen here, which I've always been fascinated with, are these mudskippers. These are typically fishes that can breathe outside water. Well, they have a layer of water which they breathe through on their bodies, and they come out and skip about on the mud, and they actually dig burrows and breed in them. And these are really fascinating creatures. I've always dreamt of observing these, and I was able to do so this time. On the second day, we were able to walk into the villages and observe life around us, both human as well as animal life. And it's quite fascinating the way the people live here. Most of the houses are made out of mud. The roofs are all thatched and made out of either palm leaves or grass. Fuel is mostly comprised of these cow dung cakes or firewood that is collected from the mangrove forests. So the women leave early in the morning and head over to the exposed mudflat regions, where a lot of firewood from the mangrove vegetation has washed up on shore. And they collect this and then they dry this and use it as firewood. Others also head out into the villages to cut grass and for fishing and so on. And then they bring this back home so that they can make a meal out of it, or feed their cattle, or feed the fire for cooking. So most of what people eat comes directly off the land. You can see people collecting grasses or plants or herbs off the land for cooking, and you can see people fishing in the waters for fishes, crabs or mollusks, and these are what are eaten daily. They also have livestock such as goats or cows, which they directly depend upon. And there is very little transportation available or any shops around the village. Although there is access to groundwater supply, most of the water is from rain-fed ponds around each house.
They have their own pond and a bit of land. So the pond acts as their surface water source for all the household requirements. At the same time, they get their food for fish for subsistence from their own pond.
So each house usually has 2 to 3 ponds. Each pond being used exclusively for washing, for kitchen use, or for fishing and so on.
Because of the monsoon season, during the monsoon season they do the cultivation.
And this cultivation is usually in the form of paddy to grow rice. Many villages also have permits to go out into the forest and collect things like honey. But apart from forest honey, there is also locally cultivated honeybee boxes, and people typically come over from outside during the flowering season of the mangroves to keep these boxes here so that they can get honey from the mangrove trees. I really enjoyed walking around these villages and experiencing the culture and the biodiversity of the region. So this was essentially a summary of the first 2 days of my trip. The next day we went on a boat safari to the national park. So I will put that up as a separate video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do check back for the next video.